Welcome back to Translation Studies course. My beautiful co-host, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderfully, thank you. Always great to be here, ready to dive into another topic.
Absolutely. And just a quick word for you, our listener, if you're finding these deep dives valuable, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help us keep making these.
It absolutely does.
So grab your coffee or tea, get comfortable, and let's really get to grips with this material.
Okay, so today we're digging into a really crucial area, applied translation, and we're going to be paying special attention to technology, specifically machine translation or MT.
Right. We'll look at its history, the different ways it works, and importantly, how it affects human translators.
Exactly. Our mission, as always, is to break these concepts down so thoroughly that by the end, you won't just understand them for your studies.
You feel confident enough to explain them to someone else, maybe even teach them. That's the goal.
Precisely. So first things first, what exactly is applied translation? Let's start there.
Good starting point.
Well, historically, there's been this distinction going back to Holmes between pure and applied translation studies.
Okay.
And the applied side, fundamentally, it deals with the use of translation, the practical side.
So taking the theory and, putting it into practice.
That's it, exactly. It's the practical application of all the research and investigation we do in translation studies.
Right.
So applied translation means translation done for a specific purpose, for a specific audience, and always aiming for precision and high quality.
Can you give us an example, something concrete?
Sure. Think about translating scientific research papers. The goal there is very specific, letting researchers around the world collaborate, sharing knowledge. That's applied translation in action.
Okay, so it's translation with a clear job to do.
Exactly. Applied translation studies is kind of the performative side of the field, focusing on that purpose and the quality standards needed, and it's very interdisciplinary.
How so?
Well, it links up with translator training, developing resources, translation criticism, all those practical areas.
And Holmes identified specific subfields within this, didn't he?
He did, yeah. 4 main ones. First, translator instruction, teaching, and training translators. Probably the most significant, you could argue.
Makes sense. Training the next generation.
Second, generating translation tools. Things like dictionaries, terminology banks, grammar's tools translators actually use.
The practical aids.
Third, developing translation strategy, thinking about the role of translation and translators in society.
Okay.
And fourth, translation critiques, evaluating translations. Though, Holmes noted and others later agreed, the standard here is often, well, not great. Sometimes a bit disconnected from theory.
That's interesting. A weak link, perhaps. So where does technology, especially MT, fit into this applied picture?
Good question. Holmes actually pointed out later, around 2002, that MT belongs in applied translation precisely because it's about the use of computers to help with or even do the translating.
So its practical function puts it squarely in the applied camp.
Exactly. Which means we really need to understand how MT works and how it actually helps human translators.
Okay, let's get into that then. Machine translation. That interplay between humans and computers. It's definitely a hot topic.
It really is. Fundamentally, you can think of MT as a tool to help human translators use their time more effectively.
How does that work in practice?
Well, a very common workflow now is post-editing. A human translator uses an MT system to get a first draft, and then they go through and edit it, clean it up, fix errors, improve the style.
So the machine gives a starting point.
Yeah, that's the idea. But there's no guarantee that the MT output will actually be good enough to edit.
Right. It could be faster to just translate it from scratch sometimes.
Exactly. A translator might waste time just trying to figure out if a machine-translated bit is even usable. So relying only on MT for publishable quality without a human, well, it's unpredictable and often inefficient.
Sounds like you definitely still need that human judgment for quality control.
Absolutely critical. And it's worth noting, too, as Monday pointed out, that while these new technologies like MT might not be creating brand new theories of translation, they are definitely shaping the direction of research, driven by, the huge demand for translation because of all the global collaboration happening.
And it feels like MT would be especially useful for certain kinds of translation tasks.
Definitely. It's a massive help for tasks that are, well, repetitive, maybe a bit monotonous, but still need to be super precise and consistent.
Like what? Technical manuals?
Yeah, technical manuals, huge batches of legal boilerplate text, things like that where consistency is key.
Got it. So let's define MT clearly.
Okay. Machine translation, at its simplest, is just translating written text using computer algorithms. It often gets lumped together with computer-aided translation, or CAT, under the general term computer translation.
Which just means any translation done with computer help.
Pretty much.
And there are different ways to categorize these systems
Yeah.
based on how much the human is involved.
Yes, Baker and Saldana laid this out. Human involvement is a big one, but also things like, is it a standard translation or personalized? What's the underlying system architecture?
So it's not just one thing called computer translation.
Not at all. If we look at human involvement in MT specifically, you've got different levels. On one end, there's unassisted or fully automated MT batch systems. The computer does the whole thing and no human steps in during the translation itself.
Hands off.
Right. Then you have human-assisted machine translation, AMT, or interactive MT. Here, the human does intervene during the process, maybe to clear up ambiguity in the source text or pick the best word choice in the target language.
So the human guides the machine in real time.
Exactly. And finally, there's machine-assisted human translation, MAHT, which is basically synonymous with CAT tools. Here, the algorithms assist the human who is doing the primary translation work.
Okay, that clarifies the human-computer interaction levels. Are there other ways MT systems are categorized?
Yep. Another way is by subject field. You have generic systems designed for all sorts of topics.
Like the ones we use online.
Right. And then you have special purpose or customized systems built for specific fields, like physics or law or politics, trained on specific data for that area.
So it knows the specific jargon for that field.
Ideally, yes. And one more categorization, languages. Bilingual systems handle two languages, either one way, unidirectional, or both ways, bidirectional. And multilingual systems handle 3 or more languages.
That gives us a good map of the different types. Now, the sources mentioned benefits of MT, starting with translator training. How does it help there?
Well, it's a useful teaching tool. Instructors can quickly generate examples of translations using MT much faster than doing it manually.
Okay.
And by comparing MT output with good human translations, you can really highlight the differences, show what human skills bring to the table versus what computers can do.
Showcasing the human advantage.
Exactly. Plus, many MT systems have access to huge stored vocabularies and past translations. That's a great resource for students and instructors to look up terms, see grammar patterns.
And presumably, these benefits carry over to working translators too.
Oh, absolutely. For professionals, MT means faster access to terminology and text resources. CAT tools especially speed up information retrieval, help find up-to-date info, explore different word choices simultaneously.
And less physical clutter, right?
Yeah.
Fewer dictionaries on the desk.
Definitely a bonus. The sources also mention MT's role in shaping translation strategy and its wider impact on society.
Right. How so?
Well, translators need to be aware of MT's role now. It obviously makes translation easier in some ways, speeds up communication, and it indirectly fuels R&D in computer science, AI, the internet.
Okay.
And the key point from a policy perspective is that MT shouldn't be seen as a competitor to human translators, but as a facilitator, a tool to help them.
Which leads us neatly into that big debate.
Yeah.
Competition or complementation?
Yeah.
Humans versus machines.
Exactly. It's a constant discussion. Some researchers argue high-quality human translation won't be replaced. It's still essential. But others argue MT has reached a point where it competes, at least in some areas. Some studies even find little significant quality difference between MT and human output for certain text types.
So evidence on both sides. What about the historical view?
Well, historically, translators have always worried about maintaining quality with automation. That goes way back.
Understandable.
But, the quality of MT has improved dramatically, especially with services like Google Translate or Bing Translator. They've gotten much better at helping people understand content across languages.
We've all seen that improvement. But human translation still has unique qualities.
For sure. It's generally slower, more deliberate. And crucially, professional human translation always involves human review, self-revision, proofreading, editing. That's the quality benchmark MT is measured against.
The source even mentioned some back in 1951 being really skeptical about MT's potential style.
Yeah, Holmstrom. He basically said MT style would be appalling and full of errors compared to even a bad human translation. His reasoning was that translation is a craft, involving uncodifiable preferences, the translator's charisma.
Wow. That's strong language before MT even really existed.
It is, and that sentiment, that skepticism, echoed for decades.
It really highlights that perceived human element, the art of it.
Absolutely. But the thinking now is more nuanced. MT isn't really seen as a direct replacement, but more as a helpful tool. It boosts efficiency, especially in specialized fields, and it lets us translate stuff that maybe wouldn't have been translated before because of cost or time.
So different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. We need to distinguish between raw MT that needs post-editing, C-Keat tools for professional translators, and those simpler algorithms for, casual users just needing the gist of something.
And this understanding evolved particularly around the mid-90s.
Yeah, that was a turning point. Initially, people thought PC-based MT would just be like the old mainframes, rough drafts needing lots of human work.
But that view was too simplistic.
It missed a few key developments. First, translator workstations tools specifically for human translators became affordable.
Okay.
Second, non-translators started using basic MT systems just as communication aids, where perfect quality wasn't the main goal.
Right. Just getting the message across.
Third, the internet explosion. Suddenly, there was this massive demand for instant translation of huge amounts of online text. And fourth, multilingual databases became more accessible, creating a need for search tools that could handle multiple languages, often with translation built in.
So the whole landscape changed, leading to different types of translation needs.
Exactly. It became useful to think in categories. High-quality stuff for publication, translation for absorption, or just understanding the main points quickly for data gathering, and translation for human contact. That instant on-the-fly translation using technology.
Each meeting different levels of quality.
Precisely. And while those big general MT systems have had mixed results because they often need so much editing, and specialized systems are expensive,
Right.
translation platforms have emerged as a more practical way for professional translators to produce high-quality work efficiently.
And what about cultural adaptation? How has MT handled that?
Historically, that was often done by non-experts, sometimes clumsily. Early MT systems, like Sistren used by the EU, were kind of partial tools giving a basic understanding that humans then refined.
So MT was mainly for getting the basic information, the absorption part.
Largely, yes, especially for non-professionals. Skilled translators rarely see that raw output. But now there's this growing need for translation in real-time communication, emails, chats, and automated systems are essential for that.
It's interesting. Could the availability of basic online MT actually make people appreciate high-quality human translation more?
That's a really insightful point. It's quite possible. When people see the limits of basic MT for important stuff, they might value the nuance and accuracy of a professional human translation even more.
Which could actually increase demand for human translators.
Potentially, yes. Especially as those human translators are also getting better tools themselves, boosting their own output and accuracy. So it's less about being replaced and more about adapting and potentially benefiting.
That's a more positive spin. Okay, let's shift to current trends. It feels like things are moving incredibly fast now.
They absolutely are. AI and other technologies are transforming everything, including linguistics and translation. The market could definitely shift. It's a very vibrant, dynamic business, constantly influenced by new tech.
We're seeing changes even in how official documents are translated.
Yes, and there's this convergence happening between scientific communication and translation, driven by the information economy, the global marketplace. Translation is just becoming more and more central as businesses operate globally.
And the market size reflects that, right? You mentioned some huge numbers.
Yeah, the current market is valued around, $39 trillion? With projected growth to over $46 trillion by 2028. It's massive.
Oh, undeniably important. But predicting exactly where technology will take us is tricky.
Extremely difficult. But we can look at what's happening now. AI growth is consistent and impacting almost every field.
Especially areas like natural language processing, which is core to translation.
Exactly. And these advances in AI, NLP, machine learning, they've fueled this sort of renaissance in machine translation.
But it's not perfect yet.
No, definitely not optimal, as Kong noted. But when you combine MT with human expertise, it's incredibly powerful. It can definitely make the process more efficient.
What are the main limitations still?
Well, things like adaptability, deep context understanding, capturing subtle nuances, accurately conveying emotion, culture, aesthetics. Those complex human aspects are still a big challenge for algorithms.
The things that make language, well, human.
Pretty much. But research is pushing forward constantly, especially with deep learning. AI is finding broader applications in translation, commercially, and in education.
There are ongoing studies looking at these challenges, right? And how translators themselves feel about AI.
Yes, lots of research. Some studies show translators see AI as competition, but also expect their own roles to shift towards more creative, artistic aspects. Others look at MT in education, acknowledging struggles with socioculturally complex material.
So a complex picture, recognition of power but also limitations and the enduring need for human skills. The source then broke down the top 3 tech advancements, starting with 4 different MT models. That seems fundamental.
Absolutely key to understanding the landscape. First is rule-based MT, RBMT, the classic approach. It uses grammatical rules, dictionaries, semantic, morphological, structural info.
Built on linguistic rules.
Exactly. Subtypes include dictionary-based, transfer-based, analyze source structure, transfer, generate target, and interlingual, translate to an abstract interlingua, then to target. It treated translation like a science with rules.
Okay, rule-based. Then came statistical MT, SMT. Sounds different.
Fundamentally different. SMT learns from data. Huge amounts of bilingual text-human translations. It builds statistical models, weighs probabilities, and picks the most likely translation based on patterns it finds in the data.
So it learns from examples, not explicit rules.
Exactly. And it's mostly phrase-based now, translating sequences of words identified through statistical analysis, not necessarily strict grammatical phrases.
Got it. Number 3 is hybrid MT.
Right. This just means combining multiple approaches, maybe rule-based and statistical in one system. The idea is to leverage the strengths of different methods to get better results. Multi-engine, statistical rule generation, multi-pass, different ways to combine them.
Taking the best of different worlds. And finally, neural MT and MT, the current star.
Yeah, and MT is the AI approach. The system essentially teaches itself languages and how to translate using neural networks. Performance varies, and it still often needs human expertise for specialized fields like medicine or law, where nuance is critical.
But the growth is huge.
Phenomenal. Market value around $800 million now, projected to hit $7.5 trillion by 2030. That's like 30% annual growth. So expect NMT to keep getting smarter and more accurate.
Incredible potential. Beyond these core MT models, what other tech trends did the source highlight?
2 main ones. First, the multilingual search approach, think SEO, search engine optimization, but for multiple languages.
Oh.
It's about translating and adapting your website content so people searching in different languages can find you. Optimizing for global reach. It's becoming standard practice in digital marketing, making content discoverable globally.
Makes perfect sense in a global market. What was the second trend?
Video remote interpreting, or VRI. This tech lets sign language interpreters work remotely with deaf or hard of hearing individuals via video link.
Bridging the gap when on-site isn't possible.
Exactly. It allows for visual cues, context which you lose with phone interpreting. It can be more cost-effective, potentially on demand, still fairly early, but with remote work booming, it has a very promising future. It's applying tech to improve language access.
Really interesting applications. Finally, the source brought us back to the basic branches of applied translation based on Tori's work. A reminder, it's not all about tech.
Exactly. Turi outlined 3 main practical branches. First, translation training, teaching methods, testing, curriculum design. Huge focus here recently on maintaining quality. It's about building proficiency linguistics, translation skills, text skills, interpersonal skills.
Equipping the translators.
Right. Training happens in many ways on the job, feedback, formal classes, specializing, but experience is always key for most translators.
Okay, training is one branch. Second,
translation aid. This is where MT fits in, obviously, as a major component, but it also includes translation software, online databases, using the internet, effectively all the tools that help.
the whole toolkit.
MT software, especially AI-based, is seen as a real alternative now for some tasks. Accuracy has improved massively. It's often integrated into SecEat tools for big projects like website localization or legal docs, and investing in these aids, and translation generally, has clear financial benefits for businesses.
Makes sense. And the third branch.
Translation criticism. Analyzing and evaluating translated texts. This uses insights from literary studies, linguistics. It includes grading student work, evaluating professional translations.
Quality control and analysis.
Yes. Newmark talked about spotting factual errors, linguistic errors. Criticism bridges theory and practice. The goal is unbiased, empirical, fair assessment. Not just finding mistakes, but nuanced evaluation based on theory and standards.
Different kinds of critique too, right?
Yeah, practical critique for usability, deeper critical analysis, comparing different translations of the same text. It helps guide users and translators and also feeds back into theory.
Okay, let's try and tie this all together for you, the learner. We've seen applied translation as the practical side, and technology, especially MT, is now deeply woven into it.
From the different models, rule-based, statistical, hybrid, neural, to that ongoing debate about whether MT competes with or complements humans, it's clearly a really dynamic area.
So thinking ahead, here's where it gets interesting for your studies. Consider where each MT model might work best. What kind of text suits RBMT versus NMT?
And think about the ethics. What does it mean to rely more on machines? How can human translators best adapt and use these tools? What really stands out to you from all this as the biggest development or the biggest challenge right now?
Yeah, what's the key takeaway for you? Hopefully this deep dive hasn't just clarified things, but also made you curious to explore more. Remember, real understanding comes from engaging critically, connecting the dots.
For your next steps, maybe research some specific MT systems we mentioned, or look into the latest NMT advancements like transformer networks, or explore VRI further, or multilingual SEO.
This field changes so fast, staying informed is crucial.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into applied translation and technology. We hope it's given you a solid base and some real food for thought.
We'll catch you next time as we continue exploring the endlessly fascinating world of translation studies.